What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Back with another list. I know you guys love the list videos, and this is my list of 12 of the best fights still to be made in 2015, and it's in no particular order. I just think this would close off the year in a sensational fashion. We're about halfway through this year, and this would complete it for me. So without further ado, let's get into the list. On my list, I have Sergey Kovalev versus Adonis Stevenson. Now, this fight is long overdue, needs to happen to see who is, without a doubt, the best light heavyweight. We all have speculation, opinions on who we feel would fight. Both fighters, you could argue, have ducked this fight. Adonis Stevenson was with HBO. He jumped ship to Showtime and Al Heyman. A lot of people accused him of ducking. And then recently, the fight was going to go to a WBC purse bid, which was pushed by Kovalev's team, Main Events. And as soon as it did that, meaning the fight was in the works, it was one step closer to becoming a reality, Main Events and Team Kovalev, they pulled out. So to me, I don't care who ducked who. It's a great fight, and the fans are owed this particular fight. Again, you can point fingers on who did what and what could have changed things, but the fact is these guys still are champions, still need a fight. Adonis Stevenson, more of a one-handed fighter, but he's athletic with a lot of power. And then Kovalev had some good wins on his resume, Pacquiao, Bernard Hopkins. So let's see who's the best, power versus power. Miguel Cotto versus Saul Canelo Alvarez. Now, I told you last year that Mayweather-Pacquiao needed to happen. That was the #1 fight that I wanted to see for obvious reasons. It has a rich history. But I also said the second most anticipated fight for me would be this. This fight really covers all bases. Not only is it a good stylistic matchup and intriguing, it also makes a lot of financial sense. Mexico versus Puerto Rico have historically given us crazy, great boxing events, boxing fights, so I would love to see it. And I consider Cotto in between what has given Canelo problems in the past. Obviously, the guys who move a bit, like Mayweather and Laura, Trout even, have not been Canelo's best performances. Cotto is not necessarily known as a mover, but he's a very good boxer, and he can employ some movement. So he's not a stationary target like Angulo and Kirkland, nor is he a guy who is considered slick, so to speak, and uses a lot of lateral movement. So it's a very intriguing fight to see how Cotto, a deep resume, a good boxer, very good boxer, will fare against a guy like Canelo, who we know kind of his strengths and weaknesses, but he has a great inside fight game, and it's just a blockbuster all the way around. This fight needs to happen in 2015 before it gets old. Now, this is Errol Spence Jr. versus Diego Chavez, and I really like this fight. Not as much of a blockbuster as Canelo versus Cotto, however, it's a very telling fight, and that's because Diego Chavez has stepped foot in with the undefeated Keith Thurman, and he lost that fight, but he did challenge Keith Thurman. Also, Diego Chavez has fought the likes of Timothy Bradley and Brandon Rios. So some welterweights with credentials. So to me, this will really prove, if Errol Spence Jr. can get past Roberto Garcia, this will prove kind of where we can place him. A lot of people tote Errol Spence Jr., say he's the next. Diego Chavez can box. He can bang. He has power. He's from Argentina, so he's tough. And this will really show us where Errol Spence Jr. is against a game opponent who comes to fight that can box and is not going to be more or less like a mindless brawler or a guy with a weak chin, those kind of things. So this will really help me place Errol Spence Jr. And if Diego Chavez were to win, then that's obviously a good win, beating an undefeated up-and-comer like Errol Spence Jr. So great fight. Now, Gennady Triple G Golovkin versus David Lemieux. Triple G, he's doing his thing in front of the opposition he has in front of him. I did a Boxing Ego clinic. Make sure you check that out. And one of the things I noticed, if he doesn't respect your power, you're going to be in for a handful, because Triple G has that style. He's tough. He has a chin. He comes forward. I would really like to see this, especially if David Lemieux can beat the style that's in front of him, which is Hassan Nadam, more so a rangy, slick style boxer. And this will, if he beats Hassan Nadam, that will give him a championship title. So this would be a unification fight. Triple G obviously being a champion, and if David Lemieux gets past Hassan Nadam, I would love to see it. Power versus power. Two guys who are on the rise. David Lemieux had to kind of go back to the drawing board after his stoppage loss to Marco Antonio Rubio, but he made some corrections in his team and also with his camp. So again, David Lemieux, he's been stopped before, but he's resurrected his career. He has a new deal with Golden Boy. He looked good versus Gabe Rosado. This is power versus power, and it would be a unification if he gets past his next test, which is Hassan Nadam. So I love this fight, and it wouldn't require Triple G even moving up. He could stay put at his current division. Vassiliou Lomachenko versus Nicholas Walters. Now, again, you got a guy, two guys with skill, two guys with a lot of momentum, and this is an absolute great fight. Both fighters are with Top Rank, so I really don't see any business reasons that would roadblock or prevent this fight from happening. So this is an all-around great fight with a guy who I would say Walters has more power. Vassiliou Lomachenko has a great amateur background. So I don't really know who would win in this fight. I would like to see it, though, for featherweight supremacy. So I could say that is the man to beat. He is the king of the featherweight throne. Lucas the Machine Matisse versus Terrence Bud Crawford. Great fight at 140. Terrence Crawford being a new resident at 140. But in his first fight at 140, he stopped a rangy, athletic guy like Thomas Delorme, who had some impressive wins or good wins or named wins. He beat Kareem Mayfield. He beat Hank Lundy. And he's been in there at least with Luis Carlos Abregu, fought at welterweight. So it didn't have to look as easy as it was when Terrence Crawford started to open up. Lucas Matisse, he also has a bit of momentum. Since the Danny Garcia loss, he has some impressive victories, some stoppage victories over John Molina, Roberto Massa, and most recently he beat a game and tough Ruslan Provodnikov and showed that he can be a boxer, puncher, and not just a come forward brawler. Like he's kind of bounces back from the style he uses. He used more boxing in the Ruslan Provodnikov. So it shows you his level of smarts. He's also been in there with Zab Judah. This is a great fight at 140 for the fans. Good stylistic clash and a meaningful fight to see who is who at 140. How is Crawford's chin going to hold up to Lucas the Machine Matisse? How is Lucas the Machine Matisse going to defeat a guy who's not as slow as Danny Garcia, who can fight ambidextrous, use lateral movement, bring the fight to you, and do different things like that? Great, great fight. And next on the list, Amir Khan versus Kell Brook. Initially, when I did this video, I had Amir Khan versus Floyd Mayweather. However, he looked less than spectacular versus Chris Algieri, so I reverted back to this fight, which is a better fight in my opinion and a more deserving fight. Both fighters from the UK. There's bragging rights involved. This does a lot of domestic money. I think people in the UK as well as the US would tune in. It's an interesting style matchup. Never really seen Kell Brook in there with someone as fast as Amir Khan, and we haven't seen Amir Khan in there with a true welterweight who is official and big and a big puncher at welterweight. Collazo, not really known as a knockout artist or a big puncher at welterweight. Didn't have any big stoppages. Devin Alexander, the person that he stopped at welterweight out of all his fights was Lee Purdy. This is a great fight, stylistically, financially, from an enjoyment, from the fans' sake. This fight needs to happen. Let bygones be bygones. Make the fight. Get your two teams together and put on a hell of a show for the UK and, most importantly, boxing fans in general. Manny Pacquiao versus Marcos Maidana. I've always liked this particular fight. Maidana's tough. Even when he's hurt, he comes back almost stronger. He was hurt early in the Amir Khan fight with the body shot, got back, rallied back, and gave Amir Khan problems. He was hurt in the Josito Lopez fight, went on to stop Josito Lopez. He has names like Mayweather, Broner on his resume. Pacquiao is coming off of a loss and a shoulder injury. This is a fight I would love to see how the styles mesh up. Maidana, a determined big puncher and a strong guy who's tough, and then also Pacquiao with his southpaw abilities, the abilities to frustrate with speed and some movement and things like that. Great fight that I would love to see. Now, Guillermo Rigondeaux versus Leo Santa Cruz. I'm not a big fan of running from your problems. This is precisely why I want to see this particular fight. Leo Santa Cruz, he also fought his last fight on the Mayweather-Pacquiao undercard against a no-namer who's a State Farm worker, and that was at a higher division, and I don't even think he looked that great. So I think he should drop back down, go back to 122, and handle this guy who's been your boogeyman and chasing you, calling you out. Fans have been on board as far as seeing this particular fight, and let's see who's who. champion versus champion. Leo Santa Cruz still has a belt there. Rigondeaux is not getting any younger. Let's see the fight. And again, I'm not a big fan of like running from your problems or avoiding them. So this will be a stain on Leo Santa Cruz's resume if he doesn't handle business. So you might as well step foot in there with Rigondeaux and see if you could beat him. You're tough. You have great body work. You're probably bigger than Rigondeaux. So let's see it. Great fight for the fans and then also for whoever wins resume. Vicious Victor Ortiz versus Brandon Rios. I've wanted to see this fight for so many years. Very reminiscent, eerily similar to Oscar De La Hoya versus Fernando Vargas. The build-up itself would be pay-per-view worthy. Both guys can talk and they provide entertaining interviews and things like that. They know each other on a personal level. Once friends, no longer friends. This is a great fight, especially with Brandon Rios catching up, so to speak. There was a point in time where Brandon Rios was always in the lighter divisions when they first started beefing, and Victor Ortiz was like a big welterweight, so it didn't really make sense. Since then, Brandon Rios has showed a chin at welterweight, being in there with Pacquiao and Diego Chavez, and acclimated to the welterweight division, and that's where he's residing. So Victor Ortiz is trying to get back on the map and show that he's still hungry. Then why not fight Brandon Rios? This would be a great seller, especially like in Los Angeles, Staples Center, anywhere like that. Fans would turn in for this. Good stylistic matchup. Athletic southpaw versus someone who's slower, but a great inside fight game coming off a big win. They both won their last fight via stoppage. Why not now? Make this particular fight for the fans, and then whoever wins, wins. You guys can squash the beef and let bygones be bygones. This is a great fight. Gary Russell Jr., Abner Matas. Interesting backstory, and I'm surprised more people aren't talking about it. You got to look at it. Now, like I said earlier, Leo Santa Cruz moving up and facing Abner Matas. Stylistically, it's not a horrible fight, but what's the point? Why see Leo Santa Cruz leave his belt at 122 to fight a guy who doesn't have a belt in Abner Matas? Again, not a bad stylistic fight, but let's see some unifications and champions versus former champions, people who already reside at that division. This is an interesting backstory because Gary Russell Jr. is coming off of a loss. Abner Matas is one loss also. Another thing is Abner Matas was the champion with some impressive wins over Vic Darchinyan and Selma Moreno, etc. He stepped foot in there with Johnny Gonzalez, got knocked out and lost his belt in the first round. He just wasn't able to recover and lost via stoppage. Gary Russell Jr. then went on to lose to Vasyl Lomachenko, so he had to bounce back. Then he comes back, has a tune-up fight with Chris Martin, and then he gets a belt from the same guy that knocked out Abner Matas, Johnny Gonzalez. And Gary Russell Jr. looked really good and focused in the fight with Johnny Gonzalez. So the backstory is very easy to spin. Abner Matas was the champion, lost his belt to Johnny Gonzalez. Now the person that beat Johnny Gonzalez has your old belt. Come get it. You know what I'm saying? And to me, I really like that mindset. I think it's a better fight for Abner Matas instead of, like, if he were to beat Leo Santa Cruz, hypothetically, that's a guy from a lighter division who's not a champion at featherweight. So I would give him more props by beating Gary Russell Jr., a guy who stylistically has the speed advantage, athletic advantage over Abner Matas, and he's a champion. Great fight. And I think the stylistic clash, because Abner Matas, he's not the type that's ever showed that he could go easy. You have to really catch him and get him to back down. He has great wins over Daniel Ponce de Leon. That was his first fight in a new weight division. And the final fight, Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. Doesn't need much introduction. When I was growing up, the heavyweight division was the division. It wasn't so much of the lighter divisions. All the action was in the heavyweight division. And I would love to see the heavyweight division make a comeback. And it is. We're getting a lot more players in the heavyweight division. Deontay Wilder just became champion after dethroning Bermane Stiverne. Tyson Fury's been handling business with names like Derek Chisora. This is a great fight. I want to see it. Two Goliath-sized men, both guys with power, both guys who showed you some boxing ability too, and they're about the same height. Tyson Fury obviously a little bit bigger in terms of weight, but this is a great fight to see who is in line for the Klitschko, and I think this is the best particular fight that can happen if Deontay Wilder gets past Eric Molina. Fight Tyson Fury. Great demographic in the UK that would get behind this fight. American fans would get behind this, and an American champion. And winner faces Klitschko. I think this is 100% fair to see who's really worthy of a Klitschko fight, because there's other guys who are doing pretty good and then they fought Klitschko and they weren't ready. I think the winner of this fight will be as ready as you can be to a Klitschko title shot or unification shot. And that concludes my list. 12 of the best fights to be made in 2015. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you like my video, subscribe. As always, hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video, it's Ego signing off.